What is the ceiling for the Kansas City Chiefs offense this year? What would dictate their maximum capacity as an offense? I think the real answer might actually come from a somewhat surprising source. I want to take a little bit of time today to talk about the wide receiver middle class for the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, this analogy is a bit clunky, so don't really think all that much into it. I am not meaning to disparage any of the players involved, but I think that there are some things that we could analyze with a group of three wide receivers that might really have the final kibosh on what the offense this year can do. And no, I'm not talking about Rashee Rice and Hollywood Brown. These guys are both number one wide receiver type talents and wide receiver number one type producers when they get the opportunity, even if neither of them is a home run number one wide receiver. There are no Calvin Johnsons in this group. There are no Tyreek Hills in this group, but I do believe that Rashee Rice and Hollywood Brown constitute the wide receiver upper class for the Kansas City Chiefs. They are both wide receiver number one type guys. Also, I'm not talking about Xavier Worthy. Xavier Worthy has done nothing in the NFL to this point, but he has a lot of tools, and he's going to be given, in my opinion, every opportunity to be a number two wide receiver. That would put him kind of in the wide receiver upper class. Wide receiver number two, always on the field. I'm also not talking about the quote-unquote wide receiver lower class guys. That group would be spearheaded by Justin Ross, who had 136 snaps last year, 11 targets, and converted them to 6 receptions for 53 yards. Not a middle-class type performance, neither. Am I talking about Nico Remigio, who spent all of last season on the injured list, but I think might be one of the last name or twos on the wide receiver core this regular season. Montrell Washington, another guy who had some snaps last season but didn't have any catches. Then there are Jaron Hyatt and Phillip Brooks, two UDFA wide receivers who have found their way to the Kansas City Chiefs. I don't know a lot about Phillip Brooks, but I believe that Jaron Hyatt is going to probably cash in for a practice squad membership during this 2024 NFL season. Nor, finally, am I talking about Cornell Powell. Cornell Powell, who might be done with the Kansas City Chiefs this season, considering the fact that he has spent approximately 15 years on the practice squad. So who am I talking about? In an article on Arrowhead Pride titled 3 Reasons Why the Chiefs Re-Sign Mecole Hardman, pinned by Ron Kopp, the first point that he makes as to why the Chiefs did want to bring back Mecole Hardman is this. Quote, a lack of progress from Kadarius Toney and Sky Moore, stating the following, quote, the Chiefs' offseason signings have put less pressure on Moore and Toney to be key members of the receiving corps. But it's still important that wideouts lower on the depth chart are reliable pass catchers. Hardman's return may signal that neither player has made much progress. Last season, Moore registered a 53.5 passer rating when targeted. In his rookie season, it was just 61.7. Ever since Moore arrived in Kansas City, quarterback Patrick Mahomes has had trouble getting on the same page with him, and that didn't improve in 2023. Toney's issues as a consistent receiver were much easier to see last season, and he's been absent from OTAs on both days reporters were present. Offensive coordinator Matt Nagy did say Toney is special when he has the ball in his hands, but also noted how important it is for coaches to put him in the right position to succeed by not overcomplicating things. So it may be that neither player has made a good first impression during the offseason, so Hardman's return improves the competition for depth at slot receiver. While all three can fill that spot, only Hardman has game-breaking speed. If Moore and Toney aren't improving, the team may consider that speed more valuable. Now, end quote. Now, I'm not sure what he means by this. While all three can fill that spot, only Hardman has game-breaking speed because Sky Moore is a 4.4 guy and Kadarius Toney is a 4.37 guy. Sky Moore doesn't necessarily show that I believe he ran a 4.41. Sky Moore does not necessarily show that on the field. Kadarius Toney shows the 4.37. Kadarius Toney's punt return in the Super Bowl against the Eagles was magnificent. So I'm not real sure where Ron Kopp is going with that line there, but it's just one line. However, I would like to expand this discussion of Kadarius Toney and Sky Moore a little bit. Those are the two who are really underachieving, but I think that the wide receiver middle class here in Kansas City includes two other players as well. Kadarius Toney, Sky Moore, Justin Watson, and Mecole Hardman. These are the players that if any of these players, just one of them, puts together a 500-yard season, this offense is going to be unstoppable. And I think at the core of things, we really, in Kansas City, as a fan base, are expecting the Chiefs to return to unstoppable offense type territory. They have been unreasonably good the past two seasons, unreasonably in that the wide receiver spots and the offensive tackle spots haven't really added up to elite offense type, what would you say? They haven't looked on paper like elite offenses, but they've been good enough to win the Super Bowl in both of these seasons, meaning that when things came down to it, they were difficult to stop. The personnel, however, did not. The personnel made that seem less than likely. Now, there are two different times the Kansas City Chiefs have really, really moved the football with the passing game. Patrick Mahomes has two 5,000-plus yard passing seasons. One of them was in 2018. The other was in 2022. Patrick Mahomes set an all-time NFL yardage record in 2022, passing yards plus his rushing yards. But let's take a look at those offenses. In 2018, Patrick Mahomes threw for 5,097 yards and 50 touchdowns. I have the top 10 by yardage players from that offense. Tyreek Hill had 1,479 yards, Travis Kelce 1,336. Sammy Watkins came in with 519, so that's 500. Then Kareem Hunt had 378, Chris Conley 334, Demarcus Robinson 288, Spencer Ware 224, Demetrius Harris 164, Damian Williams 160, and Anthony Sherman 96 yards. So you'll notice there are 10 players that are basically, this is 4 yards different, and one of those 8 receptions for Anthony Sherman that year was a bomb that would have scored from the 1 yard line because nobody was catching him on that wheel route. So 10 players essentially over 100 yards. The interesting thing about the 2018 season, those 50 touchdowns, Tyreek Hill had 12. That was the highest number on the team, followed by Travis Kelce with 10. Sammy Watkins scored 3. Kareem Hunt had 7 receiving touchdowns. Conley had 5. Demarcus Robinson had 4. Demetrius Harris had 12 receptions, 3 touchdowns. When you look at this list, there is 1 wide receiver, 2 wide receivers, 3 wide receivers, 4 wide receivers on the top 10. 1 wide receiver broke 1,000, 1 wide receiver broke 500, and 1 wide receiver broke 300, and 1 wide receiver broke 200. There are only, even in the 2018 season, 4 wide receivers in the top 10. There is 1, 2 tight ends, 1, 2, 3 running backs, and a fullback on that list. The 2022 season, Patrick Mahomes threw for more yards, 5,250, which is about 150 yards more, but he had 9 fewer touchdowns. During that season, he had but 1 player crack the 1,000-yard barrier. It was Travis Kelce with 1,338. Number 2, you had Juju Smith-Schuster with 933 yards. 3 was Marquez Valdes-Scantling with 687 yards. Number 4 was Jerick McKinnon with 512 yards. You had 4 different players cross 500 yards versus 3 players cross 500 yards during the 2018 season. Further, Justin Watson had 315 yards. Now you have 3 wide receivers in your top 5. 4, so Noah Gray was 6th with 299 yards. Mecole Hardman was 7th with 297 yards. Sky Moore was 8th with 250 yards. Kadarius Toney was 9th with 171 yards. And Clyde Edwards-Helaire was 10th with 151 yards. There were a couple other players. Isaiah Pacheco, I don't know why I blinked on that, also over the 100-yard barrier. Here's the interesting thing. The wide receivers we feel so much worse about in 2022 than 2018 when there were 1, 2, 3, 4 wide receivers. Oh no, what did I do here? 4 wide receivers in the top 10. The Kansas City Chiefs in 2022 had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of their wide receivers in the top 10 for receptions. They had 2 tight ends, Travis Kelce and Noah Gray, and then they had 1 running back in Clyde Edwards-Helaire. Here's what is happening with this Chiefs offense, however. If there are any gamers here, and undoubtedly there are some of you who have played Madden, and I haven't played video games in over a decade now, so maybe I'm talking out of school, but there used to be a problem with Madden where what would happen was you would collect wide receivers. You would draft them whenever you could in the draft. You would pick them up through free agency. You would trade for some of them. And eventually, undoubtedly, inevitably, you would end up with 8 wide receivers on your roster, and they were all rated 72 overall. That is what happened to the Kansas City Chiefs in 2022 and 2023. They had a bunch of wide receivers who could play in the NFL, but they were all middle-class kind of wide receivers. They were all 72 rated in the Madden world. So here's what we have to do. When looking at these numbers, do you believe Travis Kelce will be a 1,000-yard guy? I do. 100%. So there's 1 1,000-yard guy, 1 1,000-yard guy. In 2018, they had 2 1,000-yard players. I believe that Hollywood Brown is going to be on track to be a 1,000-yard guy. Well, they had a second 1,000-yard player in 2018. They basically had one in 2022. Juju Smith-Schuster hit 933 yards. Complicating all of this, Rashee Rice is one of these guys. Rashee Rice had nearly 1,000 yards last year. Rashee Rice is going to be suspended for some portion of the 2024 season. Now, Xavier Worthy, What do you think his rookie season looks like? I happen to think he's going to at least be a 600-yard guy. So if we have 1,000, 1,000, and 600, our top three are better than the 2018 season. 1,000, 1,000, and 600, our top three will be comparable to the 2022 season. 1,300, basically 1,000, 687 for Marquez Valdes-Scantling. Then, after that point, what are we talking about with the Kansas City Chiefs middle class? What are we talking about with the Kansas City Chiefs and Rashee Rice? I don't know how to factor Rashee Rice into this without knowing the length of time he will be suspended. But that number 4 guy in 2018, god dang it, was Kareem Hunt with 378 yards. That number 4 guy in 2022 was Jerick McKinnon with 512 yards. Taking Rashee Rice out of the equation because we don't know how much time he's going to be there, 512 yards, 378 yards. Can one of these names, Kadarius Toney, Sky Moore, Justin Watson, Mecole Hardman, be a 500-yard type guy? If that is the case, the Kansas City Chiefs offense will once again be one of these high-flying and elite type teams. Wild card number 2. Wild card number 1 is Rashee Rice. Wild card number 2, the combination of Noah Gray and Jared Wiley. Noah Gray and Jared Wiley. Noah Gray is he's a 300-yard kind of guy. We know that if he plays the same amount of snaps he's been playing, we're going to get a 300-yard kind of guy, 299 and a touchdown in 2022 off 28 receptions. I don't think he's going to play that much. I think that I believe his snaps will be usurped by Jared Wiley, probably by week 6, by week 8 at the latest. Jared Wiley is a big-bodied guy who is going to have the type of athleticism that Travis Kelce had here. Now, I'm not saying he's Travis Kelce. I'm not saying that at all. We won't know that until he's on the field. We didn't know Travis Kelce was going to be Travis Kelce until he was on the field with Patrick Mahomes. That said, when you go back and watch highlights or game tape from these 2018, 2019 seasons, Travis Kelce looked different on the field. He was not doing all of the squatting in his own. He was not doing all of the strange and funky routes that he has come to be known for. But there were times where he would run past guys. Not doing terribly much of that anymore. That's just part of age. He has done a fantastic job of compensating for age by evolving his game. Jared Wiley will still be able to do some of those things, maybe, that Travis Kelce did. I think, regardless, you have Demetrius Harris here in 2018, 12 receptions, 164 yards, 3 touchdowns. I think Jared Wiley's going to be better than that. Guys, Noah Gray, 2022, 28 receptions, 299 yards, and a touchdown. I think Jared Wiley's rookie season will be better than that. So if we go back to this collection of names, Kadarius Toney, Sky Moore, Justin Watson, Mecole Hardman, one of them finds out, figures out, discovers, rediscovers how to be a 500-yard guy. I believe Mecole Hardman is the only one in that group that has been a 500-yard guy. If he can be a 500-yard guy, or someone in that group can, the one Y Sky, is the limit for this offense, because that means there will always be a safety route. There will always be an express lane. There will always be a pressure valve for this offense, which the pressure valve for this offense, that's one way the 2018 team really excelled. Kareem Hunt, 26 receptions, 378 yards, 7 touchdowns. Spencer Ware, 20 receptions, 224 yards. And Damian Williams, 23 receptions, 160 yards. Anthony Sherman, 8 receptions, 96 yards. Those are pressure valve routes. Besides Kareem Hunt, probably, there were not a whole lot of designed passes for those players. Jerick McKinnon, in the 2022 season, 56 receptions, 512 yards, 9 touchdowns. Now, I believe that he was probably the focus of a few more of those receptions by design than the 2018 running back core. But if this collection of names, if one of these guys figures it out, the offense is almost unstoppable. If two of them, and look, Justin Watson has done it before. Justin Watson has been a capable middle-class receiver in the NFL. Mecole Hardman has certainly done it before. He did it for 3 seasons in Kansas City, his first go-round. If both of those guys figure it out, you can cut Kadarius Toney and Sky Moore. You can trade them for 2035 7th-round picks. I don't care. If Justin Watson and Mecole Hardman figure it out as middle-class wide receivers, Rashee Rice, Hollywood Brown, and Xavier Worthy are number 1, number 2, number 3 type guys, and then you have maybe Nico Remigio running around the field picking up scraps, while Travis Kelce and Jared Wiley are catching tight end passes, this offense is going to be very, very dangerous. That is all I have for this video. If you like or appreciate what it is that I do here on the channel, hitting the like button really does help me out, as it tells YouTube to share this video with other Kansas City Chiefs fans. If you find yourself here by chance but not design, the Kansas City Chiefs are the only thing I talk about on this channel, dropping multiple videos every single week, and I hope to have you back for the next one.